Hey guys, Graham and Chris back here with you again. The countdown is on. We're going to be on location at Chase Field coming up later this week in Arizona. Going to be doing our show out of left field. Left field, I guess, for lack of a better explanation. A lot of stuff going on. Of course, the trade deadline has passed. We're going to grade the trade 2.0, our second version coming around today, as well as, again, go over the standings, talk a little bit about really who we think were the winners and losers. And I have an interesting story for you coming out of all places, Little League, to end that. That'll be Behind the Mask. Not quite having to do with umpires, but it's a team that I had a little bit of chance to see the last couple of weeks. So we'll get into that coming up. But without any further ado, we put the ball in play. What's up, man?
You know, same old same. I'm sitting here patiently waiting for you to arrive. It's been, 9 years?
It's been like 9 years, 9.5 years. No big deal.
Yeah, it's been a while. Actually, I think early July was exactly 9 years.
Yep. Yeah. It was 08 when you ETS'd to Fort Lewis at the time. So
it was Fort Lewis and is now Joint Base Lewis McChord. All
that kind of joint stuff. But yeah, man, we had a chance to talk a little bit. Honestly, we've been a little bit lacking on communication just because of your new stuff going on with your teaching and everything else here. A lot of moving parts we're trying to get figured out. But at the end of the day, status quo across the tops of Major League Baseball. The Red Sox, Indians, Astros, Nationals, Cubs, and Dodgers are all still in the lead. The most enjoyable or probably one of the tightest races to watch right now is going to be in the National League Central, as the Cubs are hanging on to a half-game lead over the Brewers. That's going to be a fun division to watch because the Cubs have been playing some really good baseball the last couple of weeks. I really like the moves that they've made, which we're going to get into here, obviously coming up in just a couple of minutes on the show. Again, guys, we're part of the Grueling Truth Network and brought to you by MLB Mayhem. Check them out at MLB Mayhem on Twitter and at Grueling Truth on Twitter and thegruelingtruth.net. So I'm really surprised, more so by records than type of play, but just how similar the central divisions are in both leagues. So if we look at the NL Central, just at win totals, Cubs at 1 going down, 58-59. Now, granted, there's a half-game difference with the Brewers, so they have one more win, but also have 2 more losses. 58-59, 55, 54, 45. In the American League, in wins, 59, 56, 53, 51, 41. I don't know why that really caught my eye, but just how we see things like in the in the National League in both divisions, the top teams in the East and West are absolute runaways. The Astros are still far and beyond anybody, and the Red Sox, they're up by 3 games, but you still get a feeling out of every team in that American League East, they have the most control. But it's the similarity of, I don't know if parity is the right word, but the similarity in the way that these 2 central divisions seem to be kind of locked in this, not even a dance. It feels more like it's kind of a duel at the OK Corral, where the top 2 teams have their 6-shooters pulled out and are kind of just walking around in circles to see who's going to shoot first. And whichever team goes down, the other team gets to go ahead and be the divisional champs. That's kind of how I feel like these divisions are going to play out as we come down the stretch.
Well, it's interesting that these two leagues are really parodying each other, but I want you to take a quick step back. I know we didn't really discuss this much on the show, but I want to take a really quick step back from the entire thing, look at all 6 divisions, and let's start with the East in the American League. 63, 59, and 58, 55, 52. National League East, 65, 52, 51, 49, 40. Now, if it wasn't for the Philadelphia Phillies just stinking it up down there, those two leagues would look basically the same. Let's look at the West. Houston, 71, then 57, 55, 53, 49. L.A. 78, which, by the way, we need to talk about because what? How did that happen? And you look at L.A. with 78, then 63, 64, 49, 43. We're looking at all 6 of these leagues of these divisions are parodying their alternate in the other league, and it's kind of interesting to watch as the American League and the National League sort of play out the same drama that the other team is playing out. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and what's really going to make it fun to watch is how it plays out when it really comes down to who's going to go to the Fall Classic and who's not.
Right, and I think the thing that it's ironic because we've talked about just how good some of the baseball has been. I mean, we have seen some great baseball this year. Obviously, we've had the one no-hitter, had a couple of no-hitter alerts. Obviously, Gio Gonzalez, I think, took one into the 9th this past week or last week, and unfortunately, first batter, a pretty good shot into left center, and that breaks it up. But on the other side of the coin here, there are going to be a really large number of teams that are going to finish below 500. We're going to have a minimum of one division in the National League East where the entire division is going to finish under 500 except for the divisional champion in the Washington Nationals. It's still a possibility if the Cubs or the Brewers have a really strong, deep slide that entire division will end up being below 500. If the Mariners start to slide, the Angels are one game below at this point. That entire Western division, aside from the Astros, could be below 500. Same with the Indians. If the Royals fall off, the Twins are 6 games back. They're 4-6 in the last 10. I think we're starting to see kind of you can't fault them because they had a great run, and they're not built to contend long term, and that's not a fault of theirs. Paul Molitor did a great job with a young team, and that instills confidence in them coming down the road in the next couple of years, which is great. But same thing, that entire division could finish below 500, except for the Indians. It's surprising how at the end how bad a lot of teams are compared to how really freaking good there's also a handful of teams are in the major leagues this year. I don't remember seeing a season like this in a very long time.
No, and it's been so much fun to watch, really. And even if you look, anytime you have a situation where you have 2 teams that are playing over 600 baseball and one team that's playing 700 baseball, that's incredible. Like you said, the Dodgers have 32 losses, and the Phillies have 40 wins. If that doesn't show you who's the best and who's the worst, I don't know what does. That's the best reflection of what this season looks like for the Dodgers that I can really find. And those are the only 2 teams, the Dodgers and the Astros, the only 2 teams that are playing over 600 right now. So what does that tell you, right? That tells me that the entire rest of the league is incredibly competitive right now.
Right. And the Nationals, granted, they're at 596. You give them a couple more games straight, they're going to be right there as well, but not going to be nearly as aggressively beyond 600 in a percentage as the Astros or the Dodgers.
Right, or as convincing doing it, right? Another thing that I think is great that I'm having a lot of fun watching is if you look at the National League, if you look at these rankings in the National League, and you look at the wild card, the only 2 teams who are within 5 games of the wild card are the Cubs, who are in first place in their division, so don't need to be in the wild card race, and the Brewers, who are in second place in that division, half a game behind the Cubs and 5.5 games out of the wild card. Those are the 2 closest teams to the wild card in the National League right now, because Arizona and Colorado have really held on to those 2 and 3 slots in the National League. And I'm really thinking that it's going to get closer, and as we get closer and closer, it's just it's just a lock that the East and the West, American League East and National League West, are just going to each have 3 teams in this thing.
I'm not so sure I'm locked in on the Rays at this point. And that's really going to kind of bring us into our grade the trade is that, yes, right now they are tied with the Royals, but the Royals have been playing some really impressive baseball. Now, yes, they're on a 2-game losing streak, and it's baseball. I mean, you're not gonna win, 10, 11, 12 games in a row very often. It can happen, as the Red Sox are at 6 currently, in a row. But I'm not so sure the Rays are going to be able to go long term. I would have liked to see them add an arm to the back end of that rotation. It doesn't have to be a huge piece, but I wouldn't have minded seeing him maybe get like a Jaime Garcia from the Braves, a guy he's struggling, but he still has potential to be a good starter, guy who's been to the postseason with a team like the Cardinals. It's kind of like going and getting that guy from the San Antonio Spurs. I know they're always kind of the same team we think of, but yeah, he isn't that great. And the Magic just signed a guy in Orlando from where I am, who he's not that great, but he comes from Popovich's system, and he's done things the right way. He's been put in a spot where he does things the right way and knows how to win. I think Garcia would have been a nice piece to bring in to Tampa. So right. I think Kansas City may end up squeaking out a wild card. And if they do, again, Jason Vargas is a guy you'll look at possibly as, he's not going to beat out Chris Sale, but he might take a number 2 spot in that Cy Young with that.
What about Seattle? Right now, Seattle's sitting half a game back of the wild card, and they picked up some pretty decent players, not only at the deadline, but also they just picked up a monster first baseman from the Oakland A's, which we'll talk about probably here in a few minutes.
Yonder Alonso comes over off the waiver wire.
So, I mean, in reality, Seattle is in a position where they could make a move. Now, historically, Seattle's not going to do that. That's sort of Seattle's MO. They're going to play 500 baseball. They're going to be happy with 500 baseball, and that's where they're going to sit. Also, they're in a league with the Houston Astros in which they have to win a wild card slot to get into the playoffs because they're definitely not getting into the playoffs at 14.5. They
also have to play that team a lot because of the way those interdivisional matchups go. And you can't slouch on the Angels either. Angels are 2 games out. So, I mean, that's the hard thing is a lot of these teams that are kind of vying for maybe that last little sniff at the second wild card, they're playing teams, in their division that are, almost equally as tough. It's the one reason why the Brewers might have, a fighter's chance because the Diamondbacks and the Rockies have to go head to head so much.
That's definitely true. Now, we'll talk about the Yankees in our grade the trade. We're really going to talk about the Yankees because I think that they probably won the trade deadline. But Boston Red Sox are 3 games up on the Yanks right now, and it looks like they're just scrabbling and scraping to keep that lead. But one thing that's definitely going to hurt them in that is the fact that David Price is down again with the same injury that he had at the beginning of the season that kept him on the bench for, what did you say, how we call a long time?
Yeah, it was a couple of months. I mean, and it's, they paid him a lot of money. Yes, a hefty chunk. And, obviously we know about everything happening with the Dennis Eckersley shenanigans. We're not looking to get into that. That's a lot of drama that's been blown up on baseball and sports talk radio. So that's the one thing we're not going to get into, guys, at least not now. We'll see kind of what comes of it. Price shoots his mouth off. Eckersley responds. When you got a Hall of Famer and a guy who's having trouble finding consistency in Boston, it's kind of easy to see where a lot of people feel that the coin, whose side it lands on. But Price is gonna wear his welcome out in Boston. We saw him go from Tampa where he was fantastic. He goes to Detroit, was solid there for a while, goes to Toronto and kind of seemed to find a bit of a groove, and then slides back over to Boston. We're just not seeing we're not seeing the same David Price we came to expect. Surprisingly, the guy who's been the most probably impressive and recently has been Drew Pomeranz. After a rough start to his season, he's been pitching fantastic. But when you see, he has elbow inflammation, keeps him out for a while, finally comes back, he's clearly not the same. He's not the same guy that they saw, not the guy they signed last year. Who had went 230 innings pitched, was 17-9. He struck out. What was it? Had I think 50 strikeouts, 228 strikeouts to 50 walks. This year he's only pitched 66 innings. He's given up 8 long balls, 22 walks, and 63 Ks. That's not what you want to see. I mean, you're looking at almost 4.5 strikeouts roughly to every walk. Right now you're getting maybe 3 strikeouts per walk. It's not what you want to see. And he's 5-3, a 3.82 ERA. His ERA has ballooned since he made it to Boston. 3.99 last year, a 3.82 so far this year. It's a far cry from what we saw and what the Red Sox faithful thought that they were going to get. And the problem is, he's owed $114 million until 2022. So you're going to have to eat a ton of that money if you even want to think about moving this guy.
And that goes back to what you and I have discussed in the past. I don't know how deeply we got into it on the air, but I know we've gotten really deeply into it off the air. That goes back to the whole idea of how much money should these ball players be getting guaranteed. The Mets have that problem every year. They pay Bobby Bonilla $1 million. How much guaranteed money do we want to give these guys? But really the question that I have about David Price is he's having elbow soreness. And so he has elbow soreness. He throws on Wednesday.
I was wrong. He has so far made $114 million. His future salaries are $157 million. My apologies. The Red Sox owe him $40 million more than what I just said. My oopsies.
Yeah, ouch. The question is, right? So he throws on Wednesday for the first time to try to loosen up, and then he's supposed to throw Thursday and he doesn't because he's sore, and then he's supposed to throw Friday and he doesn't because he's experienced again general soreness. And Farrell says, quote, he'll have a ball back in his hand when he's first ready to resume throwing and continue on from there. So no change from yesterday. He threw from 90 feet on Wednesday. He was scheduled to throw from flat ground on Friday, but didn't. And he made 25 throws from 60 feet on Tuesday. So here's my question. Elbow injury or elbow soreness in the beginning of the season. Now elbow soreness here in sort of the dog days of the season. How soon do we get worried about that UCL? How soon do we worry that David Price is going to be TJ?
I think you're worried now. I mean, I think guys were worried early on in the year, and it has to make you wonder, what is consistently getting inflamed here? If there's swelling of something, what's causing it? And they've been very tight-lipped. We haven't heard the name James Andrews, which is kind of one of the biggest red flags, in sports today when you hear the name James Andrews coming up. But it has to make you wonder. And another thing that I'm curious about, kind of on the same token, and I don't have an answer for it. So I'm asking this somewhat rhetorically. Maybe you tend to be, you tend to know a pretty good chunk of stuff more than I do on a wide range of topics. I got no problem admitting that. I tend to kind of be focused on certain things, and I can learn a lot. But, as far as kind of being overall stuff, you got a pretty good feel. And it makes me wonder, when baseball lowered the pitching mound, the main reason was to give hitters a better chance to hit the ball. But it makes me wonder how coming downhill with the additional, angle of the body coming down a hill with that hard snap of an elbow, if lowering the mound to a more even level, or having it where pitchers aren't raised above the plate, if that would help alleviate some of the stress that you see on elbows and shoulders and that kind of thing. Now, I know we've seen the normal throwing motion. That's not normal. It's not that kind of repetition that your body's meant to be to handle on a consistent career basis like that. But I wonder, and if that is something that throwing up on a raised surface causes pitchers to have that kind of injury more often than players. Because yes, we hear about it with players every now and again, a football player, but it's normally pitchers who are going all out throwing downhill on a consistent basis. It's a question that makes me curious.
Yeah, no, and it's a good question. I can honestly say that I don't have any basis for answering that question in any way. I can tell you this much: if you take away the mound, you will see one guaranteed thing happen. The speed of the fastball will drop down probably 10 or 15 miles an hour. Being able to have that big downhill stride and get a huge amount of their body weight behind a pitch and follow through the way they are able to do on the mound is a big reason why Major League Baseball pitchers are able to throw so hard.
Right.
So you'll see a reduction in velocity, but you're right. Pitching a baseball is a motion that the body doesn't do naturally. It's not like throwing anything else. You can equate throwing a football to throwing a spear because your arm comes straight up over the top from a relatively set foot position. But throwing a baseball is unnatural. And we talk about how much of that is with these young guys who are in baseball is the fact that to get to Major League Baseball, to get to that level, they had to play summer ball and spring ball and fall ball and travel ball, and they're playing baseball year round, and is your body meant to do that year round? I don't think it is. I think that's one major reason why Major League Baseball takes so much time off, because they know 162 games is a grueling season. So they don't want players doing anything for certain amounts of the year, for certain amounts of time during the year. And I think that you can look at those Little League type teams, those travel teams, and say that's probably not good for them. But that's a really interesting question. I never even thought about it.
I've seen firsthand what it does to a kid. Saw it this year.
I've never even thought about the mound being an issue.
I had a kid. So this kid, just for story time here,
sure.
He's now granted this was a couple years ago. He's playing majors level, which is majors is what you see when you think Little League World Series. It's the 11 to 12-year-olds, 60-foot field. So it's a softball sized field, closer mound. Well, this kid uncorked one, and unfortunately his catcher missed, so my kneecap caught it with a runner on third. So I'm dancing because my leg is now numb, and I've got a runner coming home to the plate. The kid could zip. He was probably throwing 70 on a 60-foot. I mean, just a dominant pitcher.
What is that? A 55-foot mound?
I'm not sure what. I have to double. I have to look at.
I know from a softball distance that 70 feels like 90. It's basically the same reaction times, like 3.9.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, it's just about that. So I saw the same kid pitch this year, and I was in the field, was talking to one of his teammates, and I was like, man, I said, is it just me or is he slower? He said, no, he's slower. We've seen it. And we're talking not just a couple, I mean, drastically slower, 15 to maybe 20 miles per hour slower. And I asked him what happened. He said, we think he plays travel ball. We think that they just pitched him all throughout the summer and the fall, and that his arm just kind of went noodled on him. And I mean, and this kid's in high school. He's, I think, 15, 16. And, I mean, his velocity has just plummeted. And we're going to see, and it's the same thing John Smoltz talked about in his Hall of Fame speech. Play additional sports. Don't get yourself so caught up where, 15-year-olds shouldn't be having Tommy John surgery. So, yeah, it is a concern, for them. Obviously, we thought that maybe the problem is the Red Sox have so much money invested in pitching right now with Chris Sale, with David Price. They couldn't really go out and grab another starter. Now, I like, they picked up as we get into the grade the trade part of the show. I like the Addison Reed grab. It's a piece I thought maybe that the Rays would go for as well. Obviously, Eduardo Nunez comes over to third base because they got scooped on Todd Frazier. Still a solid pickup by them. But yeah, their foes in the Big Apple clearly, I think, come out on top for the trade deadline. I mean, you scoop the Red Sox, getting Todd Frazier. You add in David Robertson, who was a piece that I know we were both thinking maybe is a guy that the Nationals might look at as a closer or a back piece of that bullpen. They already got some of those questions answered from Oakland, and then of course at the tail end of the deal, Sonny Gray comes over. I mean, it was just okay. Now you've got it. Pineda's gone. You're worried about Tanaka, but now you got that a nice 1-2 punch. A young kid who's in control, doesn't cost you a lot of money, and it just makes you go, okay. The Yankees clearly know that they are playing for October and hopefully into maybe early November, depending on what the postseason schedule does. It was a great outcome by them.
We're talking about a team that was sellers last year, hardcore.
Yep.
I mean, gave up their closer, one of the fastest pitching, probably the hardest throwing closer anybody's ever seen, who was a key part of that Cubs World Series. And then this year, just a year later, they're picking up guys like David Robertson, Tommy Conley, Jaime Garcia, guys that we thought were going to go other places, but the Yanks went all in on them. And good for them, but in my opinion, that makes them contenders, at least contenders, if not favorites for the East. Now, their crosstown rivals, the Mets, they didn't do as well, in my opinion, but I do think that the returns they got from dishing Addison Reed and from dishing Luke Duda are going to really be exactly what they need in order to start the rebuilding process, because I don't think anybody can argue that the Mets window's now closed with the team that they had put together. As strong as they were, yes, they went to the World Series a couple years back, but I think the window's closed. I think they're done.
Definitely, and that's why you're seeing guys like Yoenis Cespedes, Asdrubal Cabrera, Neil Walker, A.J. Ramos, all those guys, and they picked up Ramos, I believe, from the Marlins, but all four of those guys are on revocable waivers. Now, granted, revocable waivers just means, hey, we're dangling them out there for one more month. Somebody wants them. It gives you a chance. But, I mean, the fact that you put a guy on waivers doesn't mean anything except for you're still fishing him just to see what maybe you might get. And the fact that you can put him on revocable waivers just gives you a chance to test the market for them. It's also pretty good, and I think it's why Bryce Harper is on this list. It gives you a chance to get an idea of maybe to show him what his value is currently in the market, that, hey, no one's making a claim for you. There's not much for you. We're still here. We're going to go ahead and give you, everything that we can give you. But guys like Bryce Harper, Joey Votto, Justin Upton, Felix Hernandez, Chris Davis, Brandon Crawford, all those guys are on revocable waivers, as is Justin Verlander. Doesn't mean anything. It kind of surprised me at first when I saw, when I hear that Tigers waive Verlander. Then, okay, they just put him on waivers. They didn't waive him off the team, and then okay, no big deal. This is just a smart move by them to test the water and see what they can get.
And I think Verley being on waivers is the surprising thing. I don't think it's a shock that teams do this. We know every year that teams are going to take big name players, that teams that need help or teams that need to get pieces back are going to take their big name players and they're going to dangle them out there. But for the Tigers to even be willing to waive Verlander, even on revocable waivers, even to dangle him out for the rest of the year until, he's no good to anybody after August 31st because he can't play in the postseason. But for them to even dangle him is surprising, I think, to both of us, because he's never been in that situation before. The Tigers have never been willing or in the position where they need to get stuff back for Justin Verlander before.
I agree on that part. He definitely hasn't been there. But as far as being surprised, I mean, we talk about him being moved maybe to L.A. Even if a team makes a claim or is interested in trading, his no trade clause is still in full effect. He can still veto any trade that he wants. And most of these guys are making way more money than anybody's going to want to pay. The hard one right now to me is Justin Upton, because and this is in my opinion here, a team that made a move from the Detroit Tigers was the Diamondbacks, and that was grabbing J.D. Martinez, put him in right field, add a bit of an extra bat. But Justin Upton absolutely he was fantastic in Arizona. He was a star of that team. Goldie kind of came up, Upton moved on, went and made a little bit more money, and obviously in Atlanta, and then they moved him around. If he wasn't being owed as much as he is, and we have not seen the same Justin Upton, he's been away from that mid 270s to high 280 mark. He's been down close to the 250s, 240s, that kind of stuff. But the problem right now is he's owed $85.5 million. If to me, if the Tigers would have been willing to eat maybe half that money, I could have seen the Diamondbacks making a move for Upton to bring him back. He was fantastic when he was hitting at Chase Field. It's a dome. He doesn't like cold weather. It gives you a chance to be indoors, be comfortable. J.D. Martinez is only in control through this season. He's a rental piece, but it's a piece that I would have loved to see them make that move. But I also understand why they didn't, because the price is much too high for way longer than probably the positive net of your return is going to be bringing in a guy like that who has so much money left on a deal. And that goes – it's what I told you. We talked about this, and something that we learned, honestly, from the first day of basic training is that, sometimes it's not always, the aggression of movement. You don't have to do a ton of stuff on a battlefield to be successful. You just got to do the right things. Sometimes the right things are small. And a team like Arizona, who adds a reliever here, grabs a J.D. Martinez for less than $7-8 million for the rest of this year, is a small move, but it fits the spots where they needed to get better, and that's why it works. They didn't make a boulder into an ocean splash, but that ripple is going to affect them all the way into October, and it's going to be a piece that's going to be big for them. And I'm looking forward to seeing him play.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him play, especially since you're going to be here. We're going to watch him play a Cubbies team who also made some big moves, who also got some big names and some big help, and who also did very well at the trade deadline, in my opinion, and who look really strong coming into August and playing through
and have
August.
One of the most undervalued, underappreciated trades of the entire trading deadline, in my opinion.
Yes. The Wilson Avila trade by far
loved it.
Was
absolutely
probably
loved it.
The best move. I think that's going to be an excellent series for us to watch. Fortunately, we're going to get to see all 3 games of that series, and it's going to be exciting because both of those teams have made some big moves, and both of those teams are in a position to really do some work here through the latter half of the season. Now, here's my hot take of the day. Take it or leave it. You buy it or sell it. Don't look for the White Sox
Can I just throw it in the dumpster? Don't look for the White Sox next year.
Don't look for the White Sox next year, but look for the White Sox in the next 4 or 5 years. The White Sox have probably the strongest, deepest farm system in Major League Baseball as a result of trading away every major piece.
I was going to go international bank account payroll. I was going to go
They
the
also have
payroll.
They also have the largest international payroll or bank account available to them of any team in Major League Baseball. And a lot of it has everything to do with the fact that they were willing to understand that they needed to tear down what they had and start from scratch. And they got rid of all their big names and give them 4 or 5 years. I think that's going to be a strong team to watch.
And we're starting to see that now as Yoan Moncada, one of the biggest names that came in the Chris Sale trade from the Red Sox, has finally made his debut in the big leagues, the last couple of weeks. So, I mean, we're starting to really see, some of those guys who they've picked up. Obviously, a ton of guys from the Nationals for the Eaton deal. they had a guy. He's not blonde, shaggy haired anymore, but I mean, the kid had a thunderbolt on his arm. To quote Crash Davis, the gods reached down and put a thunderbolt on his arm. He was throwing 102, 103. I had a chance to watch him a little bit in the Arizona Fall League All-Star game. I think I read something that he uncorked 110 mile an hour fastball with a kind of a Happy Gilmore running start. And I mean, it was one of the hardest throws ever recorded. Granted, he's moving, but still, it's a heck of a throw right there. But I mean, I'm going to look forward to being on the bottom again. It's going to be that way for a while. I mean, Rick Renneria doesn't have a ton to work with, but he's a manager. You've got to allow him to have time. This is not going to be something like a Cleveland Browns team or something like that where you can just up and get rid of a guy. You've got to allow him time to get these players developed, bring them up, begin to make a push, and that's a division that we've talked about is easily. I mean, you can get into that division if you can get your claws in deep enough. You can make a run because right now the team's built to win are the Indians. The Royals are built to win this year. I mean, they're built to have success this year, not built to win. They're built to have success, but there's no guarantee Vargas goes back to this again next year. There's no guarantee. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Moustakas, Kane, Hosmer, Salvador Perez, all those guys are not going to be wearing the blue and white next year. So, I mean, it's not going to take too much, unless the Twins really are finding this season as a kind of a out the starting block, our feet to make a run the next couple of years. It's not out of the realm of possibility to believe the White Sox could legitimately be a contending force in that division come 2020, 2021. Sorry if you don't want to wait that long, guys, but I mean, that is the name of the game. And shit, imagine how Braves fans feel. They've been waiting for 10, 15 years, and they've got nothing to show for it.
Yeah, and quite honestly, they didn't do much at the deadline, although I don't know how active they needed to be at the deadline this year, but regardless of what their needs were or weren't, they really didn't do much. They were middling at the deadline. Another team I want to talk about who, in I think both of our opinions, deserve the grade of A at the trade deadline is the Colorado Rockies, who are making moves to stay in that.
Surprising move.
Well, I think it surprised both of us, right? Because last year you have Jonathan Lucroy get traded. He gets traded to the Indians, rejects the trade based on his no-trade clause, ends up going down to the Rangers, and I'm not going to say that he's the guy. I'm not going to say that he's the guy who makes the difference in that Game 7 against the Cubs, and the Indians win, the Cubs lose. But he gives them an opportunity.
Game 7 from being necessary. That's
right.
The crazy thing to think about. Is that bat could have prevented something.
So for the Colorado Rockies to go out and pick up Jonathan Lucroy, and then to go out and pick up which we've already discussed, Pat Neshek, the veteran type arm that they need in their bullpen, the veteran type
on the market, in my opinion.
Need. What's that?
Top reliever, on the market, maybe next to David Robertson. I think it was going to be dangled out there. And, I think we both were surprised. I mean, I didn't know Lucroy was on the market, but I did not picture the Rockies making the play for Neshek. Really was impressed by those guys.
I don't think anybody knew Lucroy was on the market. I think that was just a backdoor deal that happened right before the deadline. It happened on deadline day. It happened on Monday. And they picked him up on the 31st, and I think everyone in the league was surprised when it happened, but good for them because he might be exactly what they need to keep that number 2 slot. Obviously, they're not going to overtake the Dodgers, but he might be exactly
what they need. I think clearly is our number 2 team. I think clearly got another A, probably had the second best. And again, this is where a big name means a lot. There's only 2 words that you need to say. That's Yu Darvish. Right.
I mean, you add Yu Darvish into a lineup that already has the weapons that it has in Clayton Kershaw, the weapons that it has in Rich Hill, the weapons that it has in the young kid Urias. you had Darvish in there, another veteran arm, another guy who throws really hard, another guy who strikes a lot of guys out. And, yeah, the Dodgers are going to win 110 games this season. I have no bashfulness in saying that. I really think that's going to happen.
And I am still, and again, I said this even last week with Alan Slaughter-Zinski on Space Coast Daily when we were doing a baseball show with him. And, I get it didn't happen, and I'm not saying that I think Justin Verlander is going to get moved. There's a lot of money he's owed, but Darvish isn't under contract. You got to see what Alex Wood is going to do. Is Rich Hill going to have a blister issue again? Are we going to have to be concerned with him coming down the stretch into the postseason of another issue with his hand? It is not out of the realm of possibility for Magic Johnson to look up, just say, screw it. Justin, you want to come win a ring? I still think that it could happen, and it would make sense because it is going to be the best shot for him to win a ring, and he would be an integral part of that. I mean, like I said, imagine having him behind Darvish and and Clayton Kershaw there. I mean, you got Clayton as a righty or a lefty. You got you and Verlander as right-handed pitchers, a lefty and Kershaw. Then you can start to figure out, okay, do we want to go lefty, righty, righty? Do we want to go righty, lefty, right? I mean, yeah, Kershaw should always be your number one, but if it fits your rotation to have him pitch two and one of those guys pitch one in a series, I mean, the amount of power that gives Dave Roberts, it should scare every single team in Major League Baseball that may have to come up and face those guys if you see the words Justin Verlander traded to the Dodgers. To me, I'd be willing to say game over and crown it. I mean, it's going to be hard to
and
beat
like
those
we've
guys.
said, like we've said before, and I'm sure we'll say it again at the end of this season, heading into the off season. I'm sure we'll say it again at the beginning of next season and before the next trade deadline. Magic Johnson is going to spend every single dime that he deems worthy of winning a world championship, and at this point, that is every dime he has. He's not afraid to pay luxury tax penalties. He is not afraid to pay for big contracts and big names. Do not discount that ownership from going out and picking up that $66 million contract that Justin Verlander has in Detroit. And don't think that they might not go out and pick up some of these other big name contracts. I mean, if they think that the Gold Glove shortstop is going to be the guy that helps get him over the hump, Brandon Crawford might go down to L.A. If they think that, anybody who's right now on waivers, if they think, hey, maybe we need Bryce Harper, let's pay for him. I don't think it's going to happen, but don't discount the ownership as not willing to pay that money, because they are, especially if it means bringing the World Series trophy back to Los Angeles.
And I'll tell you a team who I think has failed at the deadline is the Pirates. Obviously, Starling Marte is back. The PED suspension, you're not going to move him. I don't think that there has really been a market necessary right now for the talents of Andrew McCutchen. But Garrett Cole is signed through 2017. He's owed $1.6 million for the last half of the year. There were no talks to move him. I cannot find anything about him being on waivers. I do not understand why the Pirates are going to try and hold on to this kid. If you like him so much, if he wants to stay there, say, look, we need to get pieces back for you. When the offseason comes around, let's talk. We want to have you back here. But same thing with Chapman. And to me, what Chapman did last year in openly saying, I'd love to go back there with those guys and already making his intentions known, it set a great precedent really for teams, I think, and for players. It's a way to say, hey, look, I get it's a business, but as long as we can talk when the contract's up at the end of the year and look coming back, I'm cool with that. To me, the Pirates are failing horribly by not making a move for this guy to get him back, because he is a piece that can be very big, and the Astros are a team who I think we both agree really underperform. Francisco Liriano's owed $6.5 million the last half of the year. They pick him up from Toronto, but the pieces that, they need a starter. They need a piece who can really legitimately be a Verlander type guy, and I don't think they're going to go out and move heaven and earth for the 3 or 4 years and however much money Verley has left. But they were not active like they needed to be. Not like they should be. They needed to be active, to be healthy coming down into October to have a chance to continue, to keep contending, because this 72 wins, that all goes back to zero once 162 games have been played. Doesn't matter anymore. And I think that they really dropped the ball on this.
I'm gonna sort of no, I completely agree. They were not active enough at the deadline. In my opinion, other teams, I think the Rays weren't active enough, although picking up Luke Duda was a good move. The Pirates, again, like you said, not active enough at the deadline, not only in getting rid of the pieces they had, but they waited forever until they picked up one reliever in George Contos, who's a really good piece, but they waited until after the deadline. They picked him up on waivers. In my opinion, to sort of round out this discussion, I'm going to give you my absolute fail at the deadline, and that's the San Francisco Giants. San Francisco Giants get an F from me at the trade deadline. They did absolutely nothing. They basically sat out of the entire of Monday's proceedings. And in my opinion, look, as an analyst and as a co-host on this show, the Giants needed to make moves. As a fan, do I want to see the big names that I like, that I've watched win World Series with that team, do I want to see them go away? No. But as someone who can objectively look at that team and say, if they want to rebuild and want to get back to winning World Series again, then they need to look at moving some of these big names, and they didn't. They didn't entertain offers on any of their big names. They didn't entertain offers on any of the guys who could have gotten them solid pieces back. They moved one guy in Eduardo Nunez and then picked up Pablo Sandoval. In my opinion, that's a failing grade.
Well, and I don't – I'll be honest here. I think your judgment's a little bit clouded just because there's still fandom in you. I'm not as – I'll go probably a D. I'm not going to say that they failed, because I still think at the end they have pieces that are World Series caliber pieces there. The problem is they have a bullpen that's horrendous. And now
what I'm saying is they made no moves to correct any of those issues at all.
I understand that, but here's why I say I don't give them an F, is because making moves to get rid of guys who are already good talents on your team that fit what your team wants to do and has consistently put them in positions to make it deep into the playoffs before, there's no reason to go ahead and make those moves now when you have no chance to contend. When in 3 months you're going to have free agency open up again. You made the Melanson move. Now it's okay. We've got the back end of the pen figured out. The front end of the rotation is good. Simone has a trade clause, which is your fault. So you got to eat what you got to eat. Now let's fix this bullpen between 6 to 8. Understood. But to me, you can go out and make the moves, because the same thing happened this year. They failed to make moves to fix the middle part of that bullpen, the heart of that pen that leads up to the ninth inning. They fixed the ninth. Getting rid of Santiago Casilla doesn't fix the other problems that are still there. Now, if they do the same thing and sit on their hands going into next 2018 season and don't fix the bullpen, then I think at that point you start to have some no confidence in your general manager and your baseball operations guys. But I'm not going to, I think that right now they stood pat. They picked up Gregory Santos and Sean Anderson as some pitchers from the Red Sox. I don't hate what they did. I thought Denard Span might be a guy who would get moved. But I don't hate
Hernandez.
Yeah, but I don't hate what they've done. I think that, again, it's kind of similar to what we saw with the Cubs. Theo said, you guys need to win. Now, granted, the Giants are too far out of it, but they are a team that should be much better than what their record shows right now. I think next year we're going to see that. I don't think it's quite as fire and brimstone as it probably seems to you right now, because obviously as a fan it still hurts of what happened, of what should have been this year. But I think that they're going to be okay down the stretch next year. So I'm okay with them not being as active and moving guys because there's not a ton of things to really wait around for. work on that in the offseason, which we're going to be able to talk about a lot in the offseason in a couple of months.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be a lot of fun to see.
So, sorry, I was looking at one of the other trade deadline moves, and I didn't realize that we were really pretty much moving on. The last thing I wanted to mention, as this is kind of the awkward live part of radio and podcasting, we didn't mention Jose Quintana. Of everything we mentioned about the Cubs, Quintana is the one name who we really waited for to move. The one thing I will say that I liked that they did is obviously picking him up, but it's the money that they're saving. This guy's in control for the next 3 seasons, 2.5 years until 2020. He's got a $1 million team buyout in 19 and a $1 million team buyout in 20. He's owed $30 million for the next 2.5 years. It makes great sense. We don't think Jake Arrieta is going to be back, although if the Cubs want him back, his price is going to be lower because he's been struggling. But I love that move because it goes ahead and it gets that Cubs team ready for another run in the next couple of years because, okay, we have a young guy who we need who's here and ready to go, even though, we have one veteran leaving, we're still okay. And I think that was a great move by them. Now, I mentioned the Behind the Mask thing is a little bit different. Again, guys, this is Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham. You can find us at OO Left Field on Twitter and Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook. Of course, check out thegruelingtruth.net for all your sports needs. Everything from Canadian football, college football, a bunch of preseason stuff going to be coming up with NCAA and the NFL. For those of you who are getting excited, it's fantasy football time. How do I know that? Because Chris sent me the group message to get things figured out, which means I've got to start thinking about a team name coming up, and I'm just not really sure. Unfortunately, the Brokeback Bridgewaters has to be retired because, well, Teddy's still out and Romo retired, so both those options are kind of gone. But it's going to be a fun time for football season, and of course baseball is going to be coming down into October. So while we are still a good 2.5 months away from the World Series, the World Series for Little League in certain divisions is already going on. And as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, as Chris asked me some questions about. And the way it works with Little League is obviously multiple divisions. Each division plays through its district tournaments to state tournaments to regionals into the World Series. So the Virginia teams won both the juniors and senior regional in softball. Found a story yesterday, Chris, that the junior team, who actually came over to our field to watch the end of our championship game. I had second base for that game of Virginia against, I believe it was North Carolina. The Rowan Little League, the hosting Little League had a team there, and they also, that same Little League has a team going to the Little League Softball World Series, the 12-year-olds. So the team for Virginia apparently was disqualified, for lack of a better term, ejected from the Junior Softball World Series. The whole team was ejected from the World Series. Now, I'm just curious, understanding that I did apprise you of this earlier, but if I hadn't, I'm strictly just kind of curious as to what you actually, what you would have thought the reasoning would have been behind that, and before I actually tell you what it was.
Probably, I don't know, violation of sportsmanship standards.
Yeah, it's accurate. But I think we would have probably thought that if they disqualified, if something happened that got them disqualified, it was probably going to be for I don't know,
cheating.
Yeah, something like that. Well, unfortunately, they are being disqualified because 5. There were after a team win, okay, and they are in Kirkland, Washington. And now, granted, they were going to be in a nationally televised game, okay, and they're going again for a World Series title. Someone uploaded a picture to social media. I think it was Instagram. Don't quote me because I don't do the whole Instagram thing. With 7 players from that Southeast team, and after they won over the Kirkland home team was there as well. They beat them 1-0 in a semifinal. The girls went ahead and put a post on social media that had the tag "Watch Out Host." Obviously, host team being Kirkland, who they defeated. And they are all flipping. Now, again, not the whole team. There were, I believe, like I said, about there were 7 girls, and I think it was just 6 of them that actually were doing this. But 6 of these young ladies flipped off the camera. Big old birds, number 1, 1-0, whatever it might be, and they were actually supposed to. They were supposed to be going for the World Series championship, and ends up being that now some people think that the punishment doesn't fit the crime, but Little League International basically said that this goes against their okay, it was a Snapchat post. It was inappropriate, and the image was a quote violation of Little League's policies regarding unsportsmanlike conduct, and they were disqualified from the World Series championship.
Well, is it harsh? Yes. Is it excellent? But what we teachers like to call teachable moment? Absolutely. Guess what? I could bet you they'll never do again. I bet they'll never taunt another team in such a blatantly disrespectful way. They should be ashamed of themselves. Their coaches should be ashamed of themselves. There's no reason why a culture should exist on a team that allows for that to happen. And that starts with the coaches. There's no reason why a culture should exist within the players where they think that is an okay thing to do. Right. And that's on them. So
yeah.
I bet you it doesn't happen again. Not with those girls.
So I certainly hope.
No.
Yeah.
But is it really going to stop them and make them think the next time they go to do something monumentally stupid like that? Absolutely.
Right. So again, crazy things. It's a game of sportsmanship, and I want to end the show on a lighter note. So I don't know if you've actually heard this, but I heard this today on the way home. Was listening to ESPN. Do you know what's going to happen in 2 days on ESPNU?
No. What?
They are going to make ESPNU is going to become a very important channel. For one day, it is going to become ESPN8, the Ocho.
Oh, I did know that. They're going to be the Ocho. It's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see how it works out.
It is. He will not be able to see very well. Yes, they're going to show, all kinds of just crazy things. And I love it. I think,
if they don't show one dodgeball match at least.
I don't know if there actually is any going on. But some of the things that I have heard, they're going to be showing like disc golf. All kinds of. I'm pulling everything up now that they're supposed to be. All right. So we're going to have American disc golf, roller derby, we're going to have trampoline dodgeball at 5:30 a.m. Trampoline dodgeball. We're going to have kabaddi, which I don't know what that is. World darts, the arm wrestling, which I'm going to be square up with you. The arm wrestling thing, I have seen too many YouTube videos of guys with their forearms just snapping in half.
I won't
Not
watch
sure I want to watch that. We have the Championship of Bags, which I think is cornhole. I think that's cornhole.
Okay.
We have the Evo 27 World Championship Street Fighter. I mean, as long as I hear someone go finish him, I don't know, but as long as I hear someone say finish him, I'm happy. We have the Moxie Games, not sure what that is, and the U.S. Open Ultimate Championships. Again, not sure what all this stuff is. I'm probably going to record the trampoline dodgeball. Oh, we also have the Firefighters World Challenge. That's actually supposed to be kind of neat. It's like multiple teams of firefighters from around the U.S. Who, they do certain tasks, kind of like the whole, NASCAR has a pit crew challenge they do during their shindig. Same kind of idea. But yes, there will be dodgeball, and it'll be trampoline dodgeball, which should be even better. But yeah, I love how SB Nation ends it with bold move Cotton. We'll see if the strategy pays off. High five SB Nation. Congratulations, tip of the cap.
I just want to point out that the U.S. Open Ultimate Championships is Ultimate Frisbee.
Nice. Hey, dude, do you know how many top 10 moments that you get on SportsCenter from Ultimate Frisbee? I mean, it's like the college game of choice. But I mean, it's a blast. I love playing Ultimate Frisbee. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, it's a lot of it's good times. And I'm trying to figure out what this whole Moxie Games thing is, and not quite sure. It's like a CrossFit thing ish, but yeah, roller derby. It's gonna be that's gonna be some fun. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware. I wish that it was gonna be playing the day I was up there. Unfortunately, it's the day before I fly up there, but certainly gonna be excited. Looking forward to doing the show on location. That's going to be a blast. And again, guys, keep a look on our Facebook page, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham, and of course, at OO Left Field, our Twitter page. We will be letting you guys know where we're going to be, when we're going to be there. If you have to be out there, come on by and say hi. We don't, we'll have to take pictures and whatever else that, you want us, if you want to sign something, whatever it is. I don't know. It's not quite what we are expecting, but if you guys want to come by, say hello, we'd love to see you and just hear what you think about the show, all that kind of good stuff. So definitely is going to be a fun trip, and a trip that's been long overdue.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, man. I can't wait to see you.
Nothing really else going on. I think that was a sappy little moment of silence right there. I had to wipe a tear from my eye, or I think I might have had dust in it actually. But no, man, I'm excited. Like I said, it's been a long time. We've had our share of craziness and whatnot, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. So, guys, appreciate you sticking with us. Again, crazy trade deadline, and the trades are not done yet. We still have about 25 days until August 31st, and the waiver period ends. Anybody moved up until that point is going to be fair game in the postseason. If you can't smell it now, once September hits, we are going to be right around the corner from some postseason baseball. And man, there's nothing better than the divisional playoffs with full sun. I love it. Love having playoff baseball in the daytime. It's going to be a blast. A lot of things coming down the pike. We're going to be here taking you every step of the way up until the World Series champ is crowned and all the way beyond. You can trust us. For Chris, I'm Graham. This has been Out of Left Field.